Y'all are on. Y'all are on.
All right. Hey, happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining us. I am Dr. Quinhon N. Scott, and I'm here with
Christina Cook.
And today we're going to talk about back to school essentials. So over the last couple of weeks, well, really since March 13th. Since March 13th, our country has been hit with the pandemic, which we know as COVID-19. And as a result, pretty much many workers have had to change what they're currently doing, and they're working from home. And so over the last 2 weeks, schools have been inundated with trying to make a decision on whether or not schools would go back to face-to-face for the fall or whether there would be remote learning. And so we are currently in the district of, many of the schools in our area have already determined that they will go back to remote learning. And so there's this huge question on the table, is remote learning real school? And so today we want to talk about, yes, it is real school and what those expectations are going to be. But more importantly, how do you prepare your child, our scholar, to be successful when the fall comes, even though they'll still be at home? So, Cook, let's talk about, is it real school?
It is.
Why?
Because school is a building. Education involves the teacher and the student and the environment. I could have school on my porch and kids can learn because I'm bringing the information, they're bringing their brain to get the information, and we're having a chance to exchange. I think people are caught up in the building because it allows their children to be out of the house. But we want to create that safe space now within your home because our safety depends on it. And so does our students' safety.
Yeah, I agree with that. So safety is at the forefront. But one of the things that I think it questions, is it real? Yeah. So because schools were scrambling to determine whether or not what they were going to do in March, April, May, June. Yeah. Some schools and districts ended early. So in many cases, students were just given a grade, or the minimum grade for us, the school that we worked at, the minimum grade that you could give a student was a 70. So even if a student didn't show up online, our learning management system was dual. We had virtual platform. We also had a digital platform. So even if the student didn't show up, the student still had an opportunity to earn a 70. Yeah. So you figure across the country, grades were adjusted based upon the pandemic. And so students are anticipating that we'll go back to that March to June where I'm just going to get a grade. It really doesn't matter if I show up or not. But school leaders are saying that no, we're moving forward with essential grades. So talk about, as a mom, how do you plan on preparing your children for the mindset shift that what they expected or had March to June is not going to be what we anticipate from August to January?
Yeah, so I'll share this. So the school system that my kids participate in is different than the school system that I worked in. And so the expectation was a little different. The lowest grade, or I should say the highest grade that students could receive with my students was a D. And in my household, that's just unacceptable to earn a D, right? Because for me, that means you didn't master much of anything, right? And if that's your final grade, then I failed as a parent with getting you the resources you needed, and you failed as a student not advocating for what you needed. So what was the second part of your question, Scott?
We were having a conversation about whether or not, how do you begin to shift the mindset for your own children?
So because the mindset was already, a D is where they're operating from, we didn't really play around with the virtual learning. And I must be honest on here and transparent. There were days where I was in here pulling my hair out because, we used Google Classroom as a platform, and every day there was something. And it was one thing after another, and the work started to pile up. And my kids are fairly responsible when it comes to turning in assignments, but I found even the most responsible students were struggling with keeping up with the demand that the work entailed. And so the mindset for me and for them is grades matter, this counts, and what you're doing today is setting the tone for where you'll be tomorrow and in high school. So I think it's important that as parents we start to teach our kids now that it matters, and because we've done with the trial in era of the March through June, school leaders have had a time to meet and plan. And so now that we're better equipped to make the model work, the expectation level is now been adjusted. And so, yes, you are going to be held accountable for showing up virtually and submitting your work. Because as as school leaders are planning what the platform looks like, teachers are planning on how to drive that instruction to be able to hold you accountable for showing up in the classroom. So
yeah, one of the things that we found interesting, so we did a survey somewhere in like April with our students, and students shared that teachers were giving them way more work online than they were actually getting when they were face to face.
Yeah.
And so that was a problem because students felt like there was no balance. They had way more work, especially those students that have parents like you, or those students who are intrinsically just committed to being their best self at all the time. And so one thing that school leaders have to do is really find this balance, because schools went from, at least I can say we did, 7 periods a day.
We did.
To actually now having 2 times where there were 30 minutes per week. And so as a result, you have to find this clear balance where how do you say I'm still supporting students, but they're still learning. Something else that I wanted to ask you is that, so one of the new trends that's going on for remote learning is actually called homeschool bubbles.
Okay.
And so homeschool bubbles is that, hey, we're a remote learning family. Everybody is remote learning. My children's friends are also remote learning, and so as a result we have this bubble, and the bubble is on Thursday we come to your home, you ensure that learning is going on Friday we come to my home, and so one family is not inundated with all of the responsibility for teaching and learning. Talk about, would you be interested as a mom with school-age children to do homeschool bubbles?
Yeah, I most definitely would be interested in something like that, because it now makes learning the responsibility of everyone. And I think what America is really feeling is the heavy lift that teachers for centuries have prayed about, complained about, demanded more rights about, and that's the responsibility of educating the entire child. And my heart and hat goes off to elementary school teachers, because they're responsible for all of the contents in one day and in one setting. And so I feel like if, as a parent, you're really great at math, hey, let that be your bubble. If you're really great at science, hey, let that be your bubble. And so now you start to split the work and the load, and now everyone in the community is responsible for the learning. Because I think, Dr. Scott, one of my biggest concerns with families is that they want teachers to jeopardize their lives to go back to a building, which is what they interpret as school, so that they can just go back to work. And so I feel like, educating your child partly is your responsibility. I have a quote, and y'all, if you're taking notes, remember this. If your kid is only educated in school, you have an uneducated child. And so I feel like now we're shifting the priority back to the parent, the student, and the teacher. So when we do get a chance to come back into the building, the mindset and philosophy will be different.
Yeah, but I disagree.
Okay.
And the reason why I disagree is because for many years, the responsibility of educating children, the onus has really been on the school. And I'm thinking about, so right now we have this generation of fear monsters. And so I'm thinking about parents who are fearful of even coming into the school building. And so now those same parents that are fearful to coming into the school building are now responsible for teaching their child. And so I'm thinking about the parent that feels like I'm not good at any content, or the parent that says I love my children, I will do anything for my children, but I don't want to teach them. That's what I send them to school for. And then you have the other parent who is professional, they know every content, but they have to do their own work. And so they have to create this balance, and balance can be very difficult when you're trying to do your work, and then I'm picking on you. You have 3 children, 3 different school ages. And so as a result, you're trying to keep up and maneuver all that. So I think part of the issue isn't necessarily I want to send my child to school so that I can go do my own thing. I think that there's a fear factor, and I think we haven't given families permission to say, I didn't have a good relationship with the schoolhouse.
Okay.
So because I don't have a good relationship with the schoolhouse, it's not that I don't like you as a person.
Yeah.
I don't like teachers, period.
Got you.
I
Yeah.
can't stand principals because I didn't have a good relationship with my principal.
Yeah. And I appreciate your viewpoint, and I just want to add on to it. We're at a place where we all have to like lean into some discomfort because our lives really depend on it. I don't mean just our financial lives. I mean our physical lives, depending on us making decisions, right? Our priorities have shifted. We've gone from teaching and learning being the most important priority to safety and security being the number one priority for schools across the country. So when that's the priority, everybody has to chip in. It's kind of like, you think about big families, where every kid has to help out. I know my grandmother spoke about growing up with 6 siblings, and somebody had to help out and somebody had to drop out of school to help out. So I feel like we're back in that concept where we're all really depending on the community to do its part.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point, I agree. So the idea is that it is a community effort. I think about over the years, we've really lost sense of community with schools and with churches.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's really, I love that no one's hungry and everyone's campaigning to ensure that there's no one hungry for 2020, because now you see these public institutions really stepping up where the truth of the matter is, Quinhon's opinion, they should have been doing it
all
anyway.
The time. Yeah, absolutely.
So I love the fact that schools are pitching in, and I really challenge churches to think about how do they support the school bubble concept.
Yeah.
And so for a parent who may not have a group of friends or have that personality that they can call their friends' parents, how do you have large organizations to create bubbles to support students? I also want to say that during this time you have gimmicks going on, right? So you have people who they know nothing about education.
Correct.
They know nothing about children.
Absolutely.
They know nothing about ensuring the best interest of children. And when I say best interest, I mean what we call SEL. So the social emotional learning of children, how to ensure that you are speaking to children appropriately, how to make sure that you are allowing the child to discover who they are even in the learning process. How are you making sure that they are responsive to the camera? And so as a result, be mindful of who you enlist to be with your child.
Absolutely.
Don't just allow anybody to be the person who oversees remote learning for the next couple of months. And I realize it's going to be challenging, but begin creating structures with people that you know, of children that your children know, so that it becomes safety. And I think about, as a school leader, gun violence was truly the biggest issue up until COVID. Yeah. And now it's, gun violence is still an issue because you have gun violence in communities. Yeah. I'm thinking about Baltimore City or Chicago, who they're still facing astronomical numbers with gun violence even during this time. So it's still an issue. Yeah. Although the onus may not happen in the schoolhouse where somebody's coming up, but in the community. Yeah. And so safety truly has to be our first priority.
And I want to add this to what Dr. Scott just said. Like, teachers, we're eager to see your kids again. We are eager to do the work because we're actually like feeling guilty that we missed 90 days because we realize and value the time every single day is either going to make or break their academic success, right? Like, you show me a successful person and I'm going to show you they had an incredible village of people, and some of those people in that village was a strong teacher. So, your teachers are planning, we're thinking, we're staying up late at night. Some of us are in tears. We're praying about it because this has never happened in America like this, where we have to be separate in order to be safe, right? I mean, that's just pretty much the bottom line. And so, as much as the onus is on a family to help us to create the environment, the other piece of that ownership is on the teacher to also foster and continue to push that environment as kids are tuning in virtually. So like my advice to parents, give them the space in the home. I don't care if they have to go in the bathroom and sit in the bathtub. If it's quiet in there, then that's where they need to be, so that teachers can do what they need to do, which is to drive instruction.
Yeah, and this is great for back to school essentials. And so I've been seeing some horrible things on Facebook and Instagram about, yay, I don't have to buy my child any school clothes, no school supplies.
Yes, you do.
And that's not the case.
Right.
So, you talked about having a safe place is essential, but the reality of it is that a child has to be able to present themselves in order for them to be comfortable. And so there's certain things, parents, that you still must do, despite the fact that they won't actually be in the schoolhouse until January. At least we're hoping January. So yes, they still need undergarments, right? They still need to have essential clothing. And some schools are still, we talked about this early on, some schools are still requiring their students to have uniforms during this virtual learning time, because remember, this is school. This is not a bypass to do whatever you want. So please be mindful that there are some things that you must do. So you must continue to think about what does your child need in reference to whether it's undergarments, whether it's actual clothing, and whether or not following the school's guidelines. Additionally, although they're going to be on the computer, they still need things to process with. Pen, paper, they also highlighters, stickies. And so those essential school supplies, one of the things that are so important is that just about every child will have at least a minimum of 4 subjects. So you figure the average is between 4 to 7 subjects. And so they will need something to keep themselves organized. And so most of our students will consider themselves being organized through Google Classroom or Schoology, depending on, or Blackboard, depending on what learning management tool your school will be using. But it's so essential that that child takes adequate notes, and that child is able to analyze and synthesize through actually taking writing, and taking writing seriously. And so please make sure that you purchase either notebooks or folders so that they're able to remain organized. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is art. I believe in the arts. I mean, we believe in the arts. And so art, gym, music, those particular, I think about dance, many schools may cut that out, because financially it's going to be much more feasible for them to go straight content than actually have the arts. I'm thinking about, I read this article in Boston. The Boston Public Schools are getting rid of just about all of the arts program. And so what would you do for your children? Like, how are you going to create that alternative atmosphere for them, that as their day is structured, they have some time to de-escalate?
Yeah, great question, Scott. And the sad part is everything she said is true. Fine arts don't take necessarily the priority of your heavy content subjects. So for me, PE is, hey, we're going outside. Let's go walk 2 miles. And let's have a conversation while we walk about what parts of our body we're utilizing, and how we're getting stronger by exercising. As it relates to the fine arts, I mean, something as simple as having your kid look at a piece of abstract art. And that's something they could research on their own, and then have them create a piece of art, or maybe have them study a famous artist. That doesn't take much with access to the internet, and have them duplicate or replicate a piece of work that mirrors that piece of artwork. I missed one. Art, PE, and
there's music, dance.
I mean, get them on TikTok. But this time, have them dancing to something that's more appropriate. And then as a family, do it with them. So these aren't things that kids need to go and do on their own. Like a great leader says, let's go do it, not you go do it. And so let's go do this together. Maybe you do it once a week, or maybe you do it every other week. I mean, you have the autonomy, you have the time. So with the time, there's so much that your kid can learn. I mean, I'm thinking of like all these online foreign language programs. Like one of our goals as a family is to learn Mandarin Chinese. Why? You may ask, because we want to. And we have the time to. It's not in our curriculum here where I live, but guess what? It is in the curriculum in the Cook household. So utilize friends and family, everyone on the line that's joining us, Dr. Scott and I, you have a teacher friend, right? Someone who's your homegirl, homeboy, who you can lean on them to help you through this process, because guess what? We want to. It allows us to look real smart, and we want to look real smart and help you out along the way.
Yeah, that's a great point. We want to make sure that every child has an opportunity to continue to have a rich education, and we truly operate with a sense of urgency. We want you to be equipped to have what you need in order for your child to be successful. And so just a recap, yeah. We've talked about back to school essentials, and so we talked about the homeschool bubble, and as a result, making sure that you either connect with some of the parents of a friend of your own children, and or call the school. I'm sure many schools at this point will be creating bubbles for parents, and so that you can rotate. The other part is identifying a place that your child is comfortable in which they can actually go on virtual through learning. And remember, that's not just a physical place, right? So it's also how they look. Yes. So this is why back to school clothes are so essential, because nobody wants to get on camera looking busted.
This is true.
Nobody wants to be on camera and your hair is crazy. I'm thinking about the number of students that show up with bonnets on.
I know, it's a mess.
Or the number of students that show up
dirty
and
pajama
they're
shirts.
or they don't even have pajama shirts on, right? Because they go to bed with nothing on. And so remember that this is school. Yes. And so although it's taking place in your home, many times the virtual learning is recorded.
Yes, all the time it's recorded, because it's our evidence to you that we taught.
Yeah, and so you want to be very mindful of what's being put out there for your child. And so how they show up on the screen becomes essential, and you determine how they show up. So we talked about last week making sure that you have a certain time where they get up, have breakfast, they take a shower, they make sure that they are prepared for school. I know we had a team of teachers actually calling children because they weren't showing up for the virtual learning, and so they would get up still in their bed like, oh, I'm just waking up, I forgot. So being mindful that when the school year starts, children should still have a bedtime, that staying up all night is not adequate. Another thing is, we talked about school supplies. So although, they don't need a book bag this time.
Well, you're going to need one in January, so go and get it now while it's on sale.
So if you don't get the book bag, that's your pass. But they still need pens, pencils, highlighters. You want to get crayons, and this is just a sidebar. So for high school, you may not think you need crayons, but you do, because the arts are stimulating. And so it may just be, you might want to say, okay, doodle for 30 minutes based upon something that you have written. But you want to give them something, because the mind, your brain is a muscle. And so we all see my size, right? And so, I pride myself on being cute, but clearly could lose a few pounds, right? And so the reality of it is that I've been walking around the lake. The more I walk, the more my legs hurt. But I'm hoping, right, knock on wood, the good wood chair, that the more I continue to do it, I will get through the hurting stage and it'll become the norm. And that's just kind of like how your brain works, right? The more you do it, the more you get acclimated, and the slide is real. Summer slide is some of the best research that can ever happen in education, and it's real, and we know that students right now are experiencing regression and a summer slide because of them not acclimating and doing the work. So make sure that you're giving your children work so that they're not a part of the summer slide. I had this experience today, and I'll share this with you. So I'm in the grocery store. My bill was like $71.23 or $71.28, and so I gave the guy $72 initially, and I was like, oh no, I had 50 cents.
Oh Lord.
And I was, this wasn't a child, this was a grown man. I mean, for real grown man. And so he said, so I gave him the 50 cents. He said, oh man, why did you do this to me? And I was like, Dad, why did I do that to him? Like, I felt bad, you know? And then he was like scrambling to try to figure out, and I was just like, oh, you know, give me $1.22 back. And then he was like, are you sure? But he trusted me, right? He just gave me the $1.22. I could have been, I could have said, give me 10 right now. But that's a great example of that happens, and he's been out of school, at least it appeared to be. But that's a great example. Oh, no, this was the best part. He said, I don't do math. I almost did my Dr. Scott on him, but I said, Quinhon, just walk out the store.
Yeah.
But my heart went out to him that he understood what he did, so he felt like he had to counteract with something cool to say. But he could not really do simple math in his head. And as a result, this is going to impact him even being successful at his current job. And I thought about, this really does apply to what's going on now, that you have to continue to work with your children. You may not think dimes, nickels, quarters, and dollars are essential.
They are.
But right now, every child deserves an opportunity for you to continue to work with them. And this is a great opportunity for you to just take 15 minutes, right? 15 minutes where you make them read. 15 minutes where you make them do math. Over the summertime, right? We know school's starting in August or for some September. But in this time now where students are watching TV, engaging in gaming, having fun, dancing, TikTok, whatever, don't forget that you don't want their summer slide to be so impactful that their deficit increases as schools go moving forward to next year.
You know what? That's real. And it's real and it's painful. And I feel like, I'm thinking about the book, John C. Maxwell's book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And one of the laws is the law of the lid. And John C. Maxwell talks about the McDonald's brothers, right? And if you know the story, you know how Ray Kroc came in and just, fortified the McDonald's brand. But the reason why Ray Kroc was able to do that is because he had a bigger vision than the McDonald's brothers had. And so just because, and it's making me think about my elementary kids who have to know multiplication. Now, most of us, we stopped learning, if you were Dr. Scott in my age, probably you stopped learning at the tens tables. Now, if you're more sophisticated, your teacher may have taught you to the 12s tables. But let me ask you this. What's 12 times 13? I'm waiting. You don't know it because the school stopped at 12 times 12. And it doesn't mean that's when your learning should stop. Let me give you another one. What's the 10th letter of the alphabet? And don't be A, B, C, D trying to figure it out, right? It just speaks to your learning doesn't stop because a curriculum has capped how much they were going to give you. You go get some more. Do that for you and do it for your family. And I firmly believe you can never give your kids something that you don't possess. So if you're on this line with us today and you don't like to read, listen, I'm doing an altar call for you. Come on down. Come into the room. Start reading. Guess what will happen to your kids? They will become readers because they will model what they see you do. We know as parents, we can tell our kids all day long to do something. They're more likely to do it when they see it being modeled in their home. And if you need help with that, follow me at The Ghetto Intellectual, and I'll assist you with how you can create this environment for your kids, because the worst thing ever for a teacher to hear from students is, my mama made me do it, and then you treat it like it's punishment. Reading is not a punishment. It isn't. Right? Go to your room and read. You're creating this philosophy that something's wrong with getting better. And that's why folks are comfortable with comments like, if you want to hide something from a black person, where do you put it? In a book. Like, who made that ridiculous saying up? Somebody. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about this too. One of the things you may want to add to your back to school list is making sure that if you don't have a library for your child, making sure that you create a library. And a library can just be 1 or 2 books. Don't feel like you have to have 20 books, 25 books. Maybe you may want to do, okay, we'll do 1 book a month.
Yes.
And that one, you can go on Amazon.com. It's a great opportunity. You can do the book reads. Great ways where you can get books that, here's a great one. My child's not interested in those kind of books. Well, Amazon has all kinds of books. And so there are definitely books that relate to urban fiction, urban nonfiction, biographies, but there truly is something out there for everybody. And I'll say that if your child is not reading but you want them to read, start with 5 minutes a day.
Absolutely.
And 5 minutes becomes 10 minutes, 10 minutes becomes 15, and make your goal 30 minutes, but give them bite-sized chunks so that you're not saying, okay, sit here and read for 30 minutes.
Right.
Give them 5, and that will go a long way. And then, as Cook said, why don't you read with them?
Yeah.
You can have your book, and they can have their book, or you can even start with a magazine and say, well, our goal today is to read these articles, and then have a discussion about those articles. So again, I'm Dr. Quinhon Scott. You can follow me, PD Principal, Instagram, or Pittsburgh Nancy on Facebook, and I am with
Christina Cook. You guys can follow me at The Ghetto Intellectual or Christina Cook on Facebook. Dr. Scott, thank you.
Thank you, and we can't wait to see you next week. We'll have more for you. Take care.
Bye-bye.